I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to speak at this important conference run by the EPA on water. I'm going to make my presentation in two parts. The first, when I talk about the terms of reference we were given, the structure of the report, and the key conclusions of the strategy, of the 2030 strategy. But it is a long document. It's over 140 pages. So in the second part of the presentation, I'm going to focus in on what I think are the most important points which will be of interest to this audience at this conference. Firstly, to put it in context, this 2030 Agri-Food strategy is the fifth such strategy since the year 2000, following on from documents such as Food Harvest 2020 and Foodwise 2025. Each of these were documents of their time, reflecting the then circumstances, and that's what is the case for the case of our document, the 2030 Agri-Food strategy. We were a 32-person committee appointed in November 2019, and just before COVID, and we produced a draft report which has gone for public consultation in mid-April of 2021. That consultation is basically on not just the strategy itself, but it's published alongside a strategic environmental assessment, which makes an assessment of what the environmental consequences are of what we are proposing. So that consultation involving both processes, the strategy plus the SEA, will remain open until mid-June. And after we examine what has emerged from that consultation, as well as what emerged from 4 national food dialogues which took place, it involved a partnership between the Department of Agriculture and the RDS. After that, we will then complete the strategy and that will be the final version, and that will be the version that then goes to government for sign-off and approval. Just in terms of if you like, the ground rules, the terms of reference, we were asked to produce a vision with key objectives, actions to ensure the economic, environmental and social sustainability up to 2030 in the decade ahead. At the very beginning, we decided to use what's called a food systems approach. And that's an approach which has been getting increasing acceptance at international level. And it recognizes the interconnectedness between policies for food, the environment, and health. And it also recognizes that all actors in the food chain have a critical role in developing a sustainable food system. And there has been increasing attention on this concept of a sustainable food system in the last 5 to 8 years. And the definition of it as designed by, as agreed by the FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, a sustainable food system is profitable throughout, in economic terms, has a broad or neutral impact on the natural environment, the environmental sustainability, and thirdly, has broad-based benefits for society, social sustainability. So they, if you like, that's the framework within which we set out a set of policies aimed at delivering over the next decade these characteristics of a sustainable food system for the Irish agri-food sector. At the heart of what we're recommending are 4 missions, what we call missions, high-level policy directions with a set of goals and actions for each mission. And the 4 are a climate-smart, environmentally sustainable agri-food system, a viable and resilient primary producers with enhanced well-being, food that is safe, nutritious and appealing, trusted and valued at home and abroad, and an innovative, competitive and resilient agri-food sector driven by technology and talent. And each of those have a respective number of goals, if you like, sub-policies to work towards the broad mission as defined in each case. Given the theme of this conference, I thought it was perhaps useful to just go into the mission one, what's in mission one, in somewhat more detail. And here in mission one, to attain a climate smart, environmentally sustainable agri-food sector, we defined 7 goals. Number 1, develop a climate neutral agri-food sector by 2050. Number 2, restore and enhance biodiversity. Number 3, protect high status sites and contribute to achieving good water quality and healthy aquatic ecosystems. 4, develop diverse multifunctional forests. 5, enhance the environmental sustainability of the seafood sector. 6, embed the agri-food sector in the circular regenerative economy. And 7, strengthen Origin Green and other sustainability supports to reflect the higher level of ambition for the agri-food sector. So each of these are what you could say broad policy directions, and each of them have a set of actions which are being recommended, actual practical policies. They are being recommended to attain each of these goals. I want to now, I've tried to give you up to now a sense of the basic approach we took, the main policy directions we have recommended. But I want to now, if you like, pull out from this long document what I regard as really key statements. And I've selected a number over the next number of slides. I've selected a number which I think reflect the most important things that give a sense of the document and where it's going, and what is going to happen, what we're proposing should happen over the coming years. And the first is really something that's said at the very beginning of the executive summary. It says, this strategy recognizes that there needs to be a profound shift towards more sustainable policies and actions nationally and internationally. The DOIL has declared a climate and biodiversity emergency. Decisive action is required to implement the necessary legislative arrangements to act on this. And then on that same page in the executive summary, moving towards a sustainable food system should meet the needs of Irish society and position Ireland internationally in its trade and other relationships. The future source of competitive advantage for the Irish agri-food sector lies in being able to demonstrate that it meets the highest standards of accountability in all its forms, such that it can be considered among the world leaders in this field. So we're really building on work that has been done I would say, over the last number of years under other strategies, but aiming to take it to a different level. That's basically what we're saying in this statement. And then we're then facing up to the fact that this is a significant challenge. What we are proposing is an ambitious vision. And it's captured, I think, in this these next sentences. Ireland's agri-food sector, along with government and society, will have to make significant changes. The sector should aim to become climate neutral by 2050, with verifiable progress by 2030, encompassing emissions, biodiversity, and water quality. The strategy signals actions aimed at making the sector more diversified, resilient, and based on circular economy principles, But the core of Ireland's agri-food output will continue to be grass-based livestock production, wherein lies Ireland's natural competitive advantage. This is important because there has been public debate about making a significant shift away from our current production systems. We don't believe that's a realistic prospect, even though we acknowledge very clearly in the strategy that in terms of meat consumption, particularly in developed countries, there is a clear need to reduce the levels of meat consumption in many developed countries. But we also acknowledge that in the wider world, there is going to be a continuing demand for particularly high quality, sustainably produced livestock products, including dairying and meat. And Ireland is in a very good position to supply those to that growing market. But we're also, I think, very realistic about the scale of the changes that we are faced with as a country and as an agri-food sector. And these are some of the sentences that some of the material from our strategy which attempts to capture that. The impacts of food systems on climate, natural resources, and biodiversity must be significantly reduced. This strategy brings the importance of environmental sustainability to a new level of centrality and commitment. We've had the importance of environmental sustainability acknowledged in past strategies, but not to the extent that it is acknowledged in this one. And that is a very important central message to take from this strategy. We are aware that over a period of about 2 to 3 years, there was a consultation process involving a wide range of stakeholders within the agri-food sector to come up with a policy direction, a policy program to improve the story about the agri-environment. And that ended up being finalized in December of 2019 in terms of AgClimatize. And we see that AgClimatize, with its full range of proposals, we say it represents a foundation stone upon which the additional measures in this strategy will build and will be updated on a regular basis. And then in Mission 1, Goal 1, Action 3, there's a very clear statement saying that this is a commitment, update AgClimatize as required to ensure consistency with new targets agreed nationally and internationally for agri-food. This is really to reflect the fact that over the past number of years, the environmental ambition within our national policy has substantially increased. And we do have a climate bill at the moment, which is in the course of working its way through to allocate 5-year carbon budgets to each of the major economic sectors. So when we talk about updating AgClimatize, that's another way of saying that when the decisions are made, and they're going to be made over the next relatively few short months, decisions are made about the carbon budget allocation to the agri-food sector, then there is going to have to be a further adjustment in what is already done on paper in the shape of AgClimatize. And so what we have done in this strategy is that we have set already ambitious targets for reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, for improvement in water quality and in biodiversity. And this has been the subject of a lot of public comment, the size of the national herd. We are not proposing in the strategy any drastic reduction in the national herd, but we do restate what AgClimatize already says, that an increase in the national herd above current levels will result in a failure to meet the target of climate neutrality by 2050. So that means effectively we're saying there is a ceiling to the national herd, but there are detailed still to be worked out as to how that ceiling is to be divided out between the beef and the dairy sector. We did not have the time or to work that out in detail ourselves within the strategy. But what we have written down in our strategy is that there will be a process to examine the detailed plans to manage, to look at the sustainable environmental footprint of the dairy and beef sectors. And that will be done, and that will be concluded by the second quarter of 2022. So there are still some really important decisions to be taken. I think what we have done in our strategy is set down clearly the direction of policy in a whole range of areas, but there are going to have to be more detailed decisions taken to conform with that direction. But we were not able, we did not have the time to finalize some of those more detailed issues. The other area where I think this strategy has considerably broken new ground is that we've taken the issue of food and health and elevated it into a much more prominent position than any previous agri-food strategy up to now. And what we say is the issue of food and health should be brought to a new level of political and policy importance. After COVID-19, a national conversation should begin about securing the nation's health. This will require both a whole of government and a whole of society approach. And Mission 3 proposes improved policy coherence for food, nutrition, and health through the establishment of a high-level implementation group co-chaired by the Department of Health and the Department of Agriculture, Food, and the Marine. And this would very much build on exactly what we've had already, issues like national obesity policy and Healthy Ireland. But what the strategy does is provide a decade-long vision for the sector. And in moving towards sustainability becoming more embedded in the agri-food system, the issue of policy sequencing, timeframes for implementing the policy change, and the use of the just transition approach will be important. There are trade-offs between the different dimensions of sustainability. These need to be acknowledged and a willingness shown to reach realistic compromises on the direction of change and the speed at which it can take place. The strategy sets out the agenda from which such choices and decisions can be made. I want to move on to my final two slides, and just to finally 3 slides, in fact, and to say what's the core objectives, what's the big idea in this strategy. It is that Ireland would become a world leader in sustainable food systems over the next decade, and this should deliver significant benefits for the Irish agri-food sector, for Irish society and the environment. It should also provide the basis for future competitive advantage. And while the sector is primarily focused on domestic policy, contributing to the national policy on achieving climate neutrality by 2050, it also provides the basis for Ireland to advocate for sustainable food systems at the international level. And we've important such opportunities with the UN Food Systems Summit in September and the Climate COP26 in November. My final 2 slides are really trying to pull this together. I think in our strategy, our committee has delivered on the terms of reference it was given. In other words, to deliver a vision, objectives, and policies for the sector to be economically, environmentally, and socially sustainable. And that the strategy used a food systems approach to do so. And we believe it is both ambitious, and policy coherent. The sector represents a significant change in direction by comparison to previous strategies. The agri-environmental policy is of central importance. There's a strong emphasis on the primary producer well-being and resilience, and the importance of food and health is recognized. There's a greater focus on social sustainability. Within the substantial mission on a climate-smart, environmentally sustainable agri-food sector, there is a strong focus on the issue of water quality, a recognition that the current water quality problems need to be urgently addressed and that the 2030 targets for improved water quality are underpinned by strong policies and monitoring arrangements to detect progress or lack of progress and subsequent action. And I really would commend the EPA for its decision to focus its 2 days conference on water quality, and I'd now like to use that to introduce my final slide by situating water quality within the wider environmental policy and within Irish policy on sustainable food systems. And this is, if you like, my final message. We see the 2030 Agri-Food Strategy as a narrative of opportunity. The target of being a world leader in sustainable food systems will require substantial change on the part of all actors in the food chain. The strategy provides a basis for an agreed policy agenda for the next decade to be implemented using a just transition approach. It also provides the policy basis for the agri-food sector to be a contributor to addressing the climate and biodiversity emergency and to move from the negative narrative that has developed between the agri-food sector and the environmental interests in recent times. This narrative of opportunity applies for domestic Irish policy on an all-island basis, subject to political will. There are real opportunities, and also to link with the EU in dealing with such issues as water quality on an all-island basis, and linking this to EU policies such as the European Green Deal and the Moonshot mission involving soil health and food. And the final point about a narrative of opportunity applies internationally. At the UN Food System Summit in September, the Taoiseach should be able to state that the Irish government and its people are committed to building a leadership role in sustainable food systems over the next decade, and thereby contributing to the two great global challenges of the first half of the 21st century, sustainably feeding a growing population and tackling climate change. I want to thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to questions.